Or for you, it might be, what? What do you like to do to relax? What is the most deeply, powerfully, stimulatingly peaceful, wonderful, toe-tingling activity in your life? Think about it. Got one? Tell me what it is. Who's willing to share out loud? There's no right or wrong. I'm just curious. What? I'm sorry? Sailing. Hiking. Sailing, hiking. Right? Listening to music. Rock. Oh, rocks. What? Meditation. Swimming in the waves of the ocean. Snorkeling. Tubing down the river. Yeah. Visiting Italy. Yeah. That too. Yeah. There's so many different ways to relax, and what for one person is totally relaxing. Jim and I happen to share a passion for lifting heavy rocks, carrying around, stacking, which is like for some people so not relaxing. It's just a good way to ruin your fingernail polish, and for other people, lying at the beach is absolutely wonderful. Me, myself, I spent 2 days doing that this week, and it was 2 of the longest, most miserable days of my life. Sand and wind and salt and everything. But my wife and my son love it, so we go to the beach. Do my best to relax. What? Sleeping in a treehouse. That's one I happen to love. Sailing is just wonderful, but all I remember about sailing is getting whacked on the side of the head with that thing coming around 3 times in one after. Huh? Duck, yeah. I thought he was talking about a species of waterfowl looking for... It's different for everybody. But the need for it is the same in us all. We have as much a deep need to relax as we have a need to eat and sleep. Remember sleep? How many of you here remember what it's like to get a good, full night's rest, go to bed as early as you want and wake up as late as you want? Yeah. I myself, what I love more than anything is to stand up in front of people and sing and speak my truth. I like to spend hours, weeks alone studying and writing and making up songs and making up stories, and I polish them over and over and over again. I just get them till they're just right. Then I come up here and I just forget about it and just let come out what wants to come out. I just love that process, both the writing and just letting it come out. And yet, poll after poll shows that a vast number of American people would rather go to the dentist than stand up in front of people and speak. And much less speak their truth and let people judge it or not judge it, or but that's what absolutely excites me. There's no place in the world I feel as relaxed as when I'm standing here, because I'm not standing here. This is God is moving through. There's a guy named Aaron Ralston who is a mountain climber. You might have heard of him. Lived in Boulder, Colorado, and a very, very fit mountain climber in his early 30s. He'd climbed 100 of the tallest mountains in North America by the time he was 28 or something. Professional outdoorsman. And he loved nothing more than to get on his bike and ride for 20 miles and then climb up hills for 20 miles. Just straight up a hill for hours on end. Thing that would be incredible work for most of us. He just loved to do. So it is one day he went out climbing in a canyon in Utah. It was a canyon he'd climbed many times before, and he didn't think to tell anybody where he was going, because it was like he said, going to this canyon and climbing freestyle was like going a day at the beach for somebody else. No big deal. But on this particular day, as he was climbing up the mountainside, an 800-pound boulder fell on him, shifted, pinned his right arm. Nobody knew he was there. He was miles from anywhere else. No search party was going to come out for him. He had a bottle of water, most of which he drank in the first 10 minutes just out of sheer nervousness, realizing that he had an 800-pound boulder on his arm. And he pushed and shoved, and there was no way he was going to get that boulder off. He had just come for a day hike. He had nothing with him except his little pocket knife thing hanging off his belt and a bottle of water. Little bottle of water. I believe it was this big. He spent 5 days out there in the mountains. Nights getting down into 35, 37 degrees. Tugging, trying to get loose. Some of you have heard this story before. You know about Aaron Ralston. What you may not know is that after the 5th day, he was delirious. Hadn't eaten. He'd been drinking his own bodily fluids for a couple of days. He knew he was going to die, so he took his pocket knife out and scratched his name and his birth date and contact information. He composed a letter to his parents in his head, managed to write some of it out with his left hand on a piece of paper in his pocket. It's a farewell note. And gave up, ready to die. And as he lay there in this feverish, half-living, half-dying state with his right arm pinned under this boulder, he had this vision, maybe it was a dream. He saw this young boy, maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, looked a lot like him, and the boy was laughing and waving at him. Oh, come. And in this feverish dream state, Aaron went over and knew that it was his son. Knew that this was his 3-4-year-old son, and he went up and he picked him up in his arms in this dream state. And as he picked him up in his arms, he realized he only had half of a right arm. He woke out of that dream and he knew immediately what he had to do. He had to go live. He had to go on living because his son was beckoning to him from the future. He had a future. It wasn't his time to die, and there was only one thing he could do, and that was to consciously choose to break his arm so that at the place where it was broken, he could sever it with his now dull pocket knife, which he'd used to scratch his name into the mountainside. Dull pocket knife. Took him a half hour to break his arm. Took him another hour, he figures. He don't know. Took a long time to consciously cut his arm and not cut the major artery that was going through there, because he knew that once that was cut, he would have only a few minutes to apply a tourniquet. Rappel 70 feet down the mountain, walk 16 miles through the desert out to the nearest road. And he did it. He did it. And he lived to tell the story. Why am I telling you this in the context of relaxation? Because for the past 16, 20 years that I've been doing this work as a spiritual director, I have had so many people come to me in a state of sadness, panic, anger, depression. The symptoms vary, but it has something to do with feeling trapped in a life that's just too fast, too hard, too sad. People who feel like they're stuck under a boulder. Not completely stuck, they could get out, but they're stuck in a boulder called a job they no longer like, a lifestyle which is just too fast, a family which just no longer fits them. And they feel like they're dying in place. And the vast majority of those folks aren't suffering. They're not like starving. They're not hungry. They're not being beaten. They just feel trapped under a boulder that's just too heavy. exacerbated greatly by a lifestyle which demands that the paychecks keep coming and the mortgages keep